sovereign wealth funds quietly pull the strings of global policy, and the impact is far bigger than anyone imagines. Stay tuned because number one is a power move that almost no country can match. Funding massive overseas infrastructure has become a signature move for many sovereign wealth funds, allowing them to embed economic ties while earning returns. Nations like the United Arab Emirates and Singapore channel billions into ports, highways, and renewable energy plants far from home, creating jobs and securing strategic footholds. These projects often come bundled with favorable loan terms, giving the investor state leverage in diplomatic negotiations. Critics argue that such deals can sideline local businesses, yet host governments frequently tout the influx of capital and expertise. By financing visible, long-term assets, the funds not only diversify their portfolios, but also weave themselves into the fabric of foreign economies. Up next, we'll see how strategic equity stakes turn finance into influence.
Strategic equity stakes in vital sectors let sovereign wealth funds become silent boardroom players with outsized sway. By acquiring sizable shares in energy giants, telecom operators, or defense contractors, these funds gain access to confidential strategies and can nudge corporate decisions toward national interests. For example, Norway's government pension fund Global holds notable positions in oil majors, while Saudi Arabia's public investment fund has invested heavily in technology and automotive firms. Such holdings often come with informal expectations, support for policies that favor the fund's home country, or cooperation on joint ventures. While the ownership is disclosed, the subtle influence on pricing, supply chains, and even research directions remains largely behind the scenes. Next, we'll explore the quiet art of lobbying through think tanks and consultants.
Lobbying through think tanks and consultants provides sovereign wealth funds with a polished channel to shape policy narratives. By funding research institutions, they sponsor reports that highlight the benefits of certain trade agreements, renewable energy subsidies, or regulatory reforms aligned with their investment goals. These studies often appear in media outlets, subtly steering public opinion and informing lawmakers. In turn, consultants craft briefing packages for diplomats, ensuring that the fund's perspectives are heard during negotiations. Some funds also host high-level roundtables, inviting policymakers to discuss emerging market opportunities, effectively setting the agenda. Although the money trail is transparent, the influence embedded in the ideas presented can be profound and hard to trace. Coming up, we'll see how bilateral investment treaties become tools of policy leverage.
Bilateral investment treaties, BITs, serve as legal bridges that translate sovereign wealth fund capital into diplomatic leverage. When a fund signs a BIT with another nation, it secures protections for its assets while granting the home country a seat at the table during trade talks. These treaties often include clauses on dispute resolution, market access, and even provisions for joint infrastructure projects. By embedding investment guarantees, governments can subtly pressure partners to adopt policies favorable to the fund's strategic aims, such as opening sectors to foreign ownership or easing environmental standards. Critics note that BITs can constrain a nation's policy flexibility, yet supporters argue they foster stability and attract further investment. Up next, we'll uncover how climate finance and green bonds become diplomatic tools.
Climate finance and green bonds have emerged as a diplomatic frontier for sovereign wealth funds seeking both returns and global goodwill. By allocating capital to renewable projects and issuing green bonds, these funds showcase commitment to sustainability while influencing environmental policy abroad. Countries like Norway and New Zealand channel portions of their funds into offshore wind farms, solar arrays, and carbon capture initiatives, often tying the investments to bilateral climate agreements. The presence of a sizable green portfolio can pressure host governments to adopt stricter emissions standards or to prioritize clean energy infrastructure. Moreover, the transparency requirements of green bonds create a benchmark that other investors follow, amplifying the fund's policy impact. Next, we'll examine how sovereign wealth can be wielded as leverage during sanctions.
Leveraging sanctions and diplomatic pressure is a potent, albeit less visible, tactic employed by sovereign wealth funds. When a fund's home country imposes economic sanctions, the fund can freeze or redirect its overseas holdings, effectively amplifying the political message. Conversely, the promise of unlocking sovereign fund assets can be used as an incentive for targeted nations to alter behavior, such as complying with nuclear agreements or human rights standards. Because these funds control vast sums, their asset movements can sway markets, creating additional pressure on sanctioned regimes. Some analysts suggest that the mere threat of withdrawing sovereign fund investments can prompt negotiations before formal sanctions are enacted. Up next, we'll explore how political contributions and NGOs become subtle channels of influence.
Supporting political campaigns and NGOs offers sovereign wealth funds a discrete avenue to mold foreign policy from the grassroots up. By donating to think tank foundations, advocacy groups, or even direct campaign funds in allied countries, they help shape narratives around trade, security, and development. These contributions often focus on issues that align with the fund's long-term investment horizons, such as infrastructure development or energy independence. While the donations are publicly recorded, the strategic intent, steering policy conversations toward outcomes that benefit the fund's portfolio, remains nuanced. Critics warn that such influence can blur the line between legitimate philanthropy and covert lobbying. In the next segment, we'll see how participation in standards bodies translates financial clout into technical rulemaking.
Shaping international standards and norms allows sovereign wealth funds to embed their priorities into the very rules that govern global markets. By securing seats on advisory panels of organizations like the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, or the International Energy Agency, IEA, fund representatives can advocate for standards that favor their investment sectors, be it renewable energy certifications or data privacy frameworks for tech holdings. Their participation ensures that emerging regulations align with the technologies and practices their portfolios rely on, giving them a competitive edge. Moreover, these standards often become de facto requirements for all market participants, extending the fund's influence far beyond its direct holdings. Next, we'll explore how currency markets become another playground for sovereign wealth.
Influencing foreign exchange and currency stability is a subtle, yet powerful lever for sovereign wealth funds looking to protect and enhance portfolio returns. By holding large positions in particular currencies, these funds can affect exchange rates, especially in smaller economies where liquidity is limited. Some funds coordinate with central banks to provide liquidity support during crises, effectively acting as a stabilizing force that earns goodwill and policy concessions. Others use currency swaps or forward contracts to hedge against volatility, indirectly signaling confidence in certain markets and encouraging private investors to follow suit. This financial muscle can be wielded during trade negotiations, where a stable currency becomes a bargaining chip. Finally, we arrive at the ultimate culmination of influence.
Steering global economic governance represents the pinnacle of sovereign wealth fund influence, where financial heft translates directly into shaping the rules of the world economy. Through substantial voting power in institutions like the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and various development banks, these funds help set lending terms, development priorities, and crisis response mechanisms. Their representatives sit on executive boards, propose policy reforms, and negotiate budget allocations that reflect the strategic interests of their home nations. By aligning these multilateral agendas with their long-term investment strategies, such as promoting sustainable infrastructure or encouraging market liberalization, sovereign wealth funds effectively embed their vision into the fabric of global policy. This top-level leverage not only safeguards their assets but also redefines how nations interact, making the fund a silent architect of the international order.
We've journeyed through 10 distinct ways these state-owned giants shape the world stage, from building roads abroad to steering climate finance, and even swaying the rules that govern global markets. The depth of their reach shows why understanding sovereign wealth funds is essential for anyone watching international affairs. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden levers, subscribe now so you won't miss the next mind-blowing list we drop each week. Which influence surprised you most? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this worth your time, give it a like. Thanks for watching.